Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone, welcome. This is AI Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we're here to talk about document and process automation with agentic AI. Agentic automation refers to automation systems designed to not just perform tasks, but to act with a degree of autonomy and decision making, often collaborating with humans. Perhaps most compelling is that agentic automation can interpret context, make judgments, and adapt its actions, making it a powerful tool for process improvement. The implications are important and on the way. So, what should we know about agentic automation? Why is process automation and document automation and AI critical paths for organizations today? And how do tools like Gen AI fit into the picture? Luckily, we have a great panel of guests today to help us understand, and we're going to dive in just a moment. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone for attending today, and that includes all the folks joining us today on LinkedIn. And hello, everyone joining us today on Zoom. Look, thank you for being with us. During today, I hope that you'll hear from some experts about how we can leverage AI in ways that really matter. I'd like to invite you to join in with your comments in the chat section. If you have a question along the way, please jump on in. We'd like you to participate too. I will attempt to get some of your questions and comments into the flow of the show, and we may have a few minutes also at the end for your questions. All right, let me introduce our guests today, starting with Marlene Wolf-Gruber, AI and Document Strategy Lead at Abby. Welcome, Marlene. Are you with us?
Hi, Kevin. Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Hello, Marlene. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Munich in Germany, and it's already 6 in the evening.
Wonderful. Well, it's the morning here where I am, so I appreciate you joining us here in the evening time. It's great
Sure.
to have you with us today. Thank you so much. Joining us also is Hugh Jones. Hugh is head of product intelligent automation at Lloyd's Banking Group. Hugh, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from?
Hey Kevin, pleasure to be here. I'm in London, so we're about an hour behind Marlene. Yeah, it's still dark here, but I'm really excited for the show. Thank you for having me.
Lovely. It's great to have you with us, Hugh. Thank you so much. And also joining us today is Amy Machado, Research Manager at IDC. Amy, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Newport, Rhode Island, so I'm spending my lunch with you guys.
Nice. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you, Amy, Hugh, and Marlene. It's great to have you with us today. I'd like to start by asking Amy to help get us a perspective of today. Your perspective and expertise on the most current research in this area will be most helpful in setting the stage today. And I understand you have some remarks that will help us establish some context for our discussion today. So, please, what is agentic AI? How does it apply in document and process automation? And what should we be thinking about today as we join our discussion?
Sure, happy to dive right in. Agentic automation, document AI, like there's so many words and the taxonomy of how we talk about things has changed so quickly recently. It's fast evolving. Large language models, small language models, BYOM, bring your own model, Gen AI, now agentic workflows, recent history, thinking about business process automation, BPA, then RPA, then it feels like it was forever ago, but big data, Hadoop, thinking about those things, and IDP, intelligent document processing, all these terms. But I think IDP is kind of going to be a lot of focus today because it really is what's unlocking unstructured data. That's making your data bigger, it's giving you more data. But in the end, this is really all about enterprise intelligence and automation. And when the general purpose LLMs dropped a few years ago, we all heard, this is a game changer, but really the rules of the game haven't changed. You still need to do your job securely. Your business has to run compliant. It has to run with good data. And you still have to give your customers a great experience. We're also hearing the words guardrails a lot lately, and that is also something that has always existed in your business. Guardrails didn't emerge with ChatGPT in 2023. So guardrails, accurate data, understanding the process, explainability, ensuring compliance, Those are requirements that you've always had, and agentic automation isn't changing that. The requirement for enterprise grade security and scale hasn't changed. So that's why enterprise automation, agentic automation needs more than large language models, essentially. And Anna, if you could pop up the first slide that I have. At IDC, we survey enterprise tech buyers every month. We ask them questions about technology investments, about their strategy, the trends that they're seeing. And most companies already have an AI strategy, nearly all of them, but there are different levels of maturity of how people are kind of like stacking up within that 94, 95%. So for most companies, they have an AI strategy, but it's really kind of tied to specific business functions or business areas. They're looking to transform like specific things that are happening within the business. Then there are companies that have an enterprise-wide strategy that is thinking about transforming the operational model as a whole. And then there are those that are the most mature, but most people aren't here yet, which is thinking about using AI to not just redefine what they are as a business, but also using it to drive operational and competitive advantages. But even if you have an AI strategy, people still have concerns. You know, there are concerns around the control of their data, their intellectual property. People have concerns about exposing their brand to regulatory risks, and they have concerns about accuracy and potential toxicity of outcomes. So basically, bad data in, bad data out. You're not getting, you get these hallucinations, you don't get, accurate information. So you need trusted AI. You don't just need an LLM, you need something that you can trust. But also to help you get to that level of maturity. If you want to move to the next slide, Anna, I only have 2 slides. Don't worry, I'm not going to drown everybody today. It's thinking about your overall AI strategy. So as you're thinking about what that roadmap looks like for you and your company, from AI to automation to agentic AI, you have to be thinking about the overall impact of the business in terms of strategy. And my slide just went away. So there's many things you can think about here, but like revenue generation matters, how it impacts your customer experience, how that impacts your employee experience, productivity, efficiency. How are you innovating? How is this helping you be sustainable as a business? Time to market, new product introductions. How is it actually helping you improve your security position? How is it helping you establish trust internally and externally? And then business resilience. Things are changing so fast. How are you kind of future-proofing the business for what comes next? So this applies to AI. Agentic automation is another level of AI, but it really is thinking about like the overall strategy for your business as you think about what investments that you are making. And so it is about what investments you're making, but also like the process of what you're doing and how you're using AI for that. And I think that kind of is the overarching theme for what we're going to talk about today.
Well, Amy, as you're talking, it occurs to me that, we are in a world of so many acronyms now. We've got AI and LLMs and IDP and so many acronyms, different ways of slicing the potato. From your perspective, what is exactly agentic automation? How does it differ from some of the other tools that we might be familiar with, like something like ChatGPT or just process automation that we've been doing for a number of years prior to this? How do you define agentic automation, and where do you really feel the opportunities are for us today?
So for agentic automation, that's a great question. And there's we call it like agent washing. Not everything that's an agent is an agent. To me, it's all on a spectrum of automation, business processes. And then there are different capabilities and tools that you can leverage to use that. Agentic automation or agentic AI, it allows for not such prescriptive automation. It is more, it can reason, it can take the next step, it can be proactive, but typically it is making those decisions based off of your enterprise content, your data, your documents, your standard operating procedures. It's not just, it needs, again, that guardrail to make its next move. So a lot of times we do see these things that are kind of co-pilot experiences, question and answer, enterprise search capabilities. There can be agentic parts to that, but agentic automation to me is kind of a thoughtful, dynamic way for automations to kind of improve and optimize over time without such human interaction. Not that there isn't going to be the human in the loop. It's another acronym we're hearing now is like human on the loop, HOTL as well. But you asked kind of like what are the tools to leverage that? IDP to me is the core of that. Document AI and IDP are essential because the first step of any type of automation, even agentic automation, is structuring your unstructured data. So you need to ingest, extract, validate, transform. In the past, we've called it like capture, but it is kind of like the next level of capture. And it's organizing your document, your data, but making it usable for downstream business applications, whatever they are. Now, what's been really exciting lately is because of what we have been able to do with LLMs and document AIs, we can structure highly unstructured documents. Think long form, a lot of text, multimodal, charts, tables, and sections. So it's kind of unlocking data or content that we didn't have access to. And then Document AI combines different advanced AI models, traditional OCR, which still works great for many, many use cases. You don't even need a large language model for everything, but to help automate that understanding, extracting, and processing of information from document types. So, but IDP is a process, intelligent document processing. So it doesn't exist in a bubble. And so thinking about agentic workflows or just basic automations, you're looking for ways to leverage AI and machine learning to look at how that process operates across systems, to discover insights about how you can improve those workflows, upstream or downstream, to look for inefficiencies, for bottlenecks, so you can make good decisions about your the operations that you're doing. And that's when we talk about agentic automation, just remember that it is a process. But IDP and process AI, looking into what you're doing, that's foundational. You have to have that accurate data. Accurate data is what you need for agents to be running, behind the scenes doing what they're doing. But they also need context to do their work. And then that's where large language models come in terms of being able to interpret and understanding nuance, like kind of a hybrid approach of what everyone is doing. But in the end, I want to get back to that point I was making earlier. Even if you're just using traditional RPA or like agentic frameworks, the reality is that you are still having to build those accurate outcomes.
All right, very good, Amy. That was so helpful. Your perspective and advice are so spot on. Now that we have a grounding for our session today, I'd like to bring in Marlene and Hugh into our discussion. And Amy, I'm counting on you to jump in and continue with your perspectives as well. But Marlene, from your perspective, where does agentic automation provide the most value and promise today? And why are process AI and document AI essential foundations to capture that value?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. And I think actually Amy already touched upon a lot of those things, or actually answered a lot of those questions, or part of that question. I personally see the biggest value of agentic automation not in every place. That's maybe something I want to say. First of all, it's in my opinion only really successful or adaptable where work is complex and constantly changing. It's nothing for rigid, very predictable processes. Think of onboarding or claims processing. Anywhere it requires adaptation or flexibility, as well as some real world context rather than, like I said, rigid rules scenarios. So this is where I think the agentic automation can really shine, because that's where agents would need to see what's going on and understand, and then decide what to do. So just like people would do. But like humans, the AI agents need to understand the context, right? And Amy also touched upon this already, and be able to interpret the content. And that's exactly where process AI and document AI provide those agents with the relevant information here. So process AI would give the agents the situational awareness, the process awareness. It understands how the work actually works or flows, and then what the normal patterns would look like and where exceptions are. So it's actually also, the first question I think every business should ask themselves is the why and where, and not just right or immediately jump into the choosing the technology thing. And the document AI then provides the other half, if you will, of the intelligence. It helps the system to interpret the meaning from all the business content that drives eventually all the business decisions, or drives the decisions from contracts, forms, correspondence of any shape, reports. And I think that's where organizations start seeing real sustained value. Of course, more speed, but also accuracy, resilience, and better decision quality in the end.
Now, Hugh, I'd like to bring you into this conversation. Can you give us an example of how Lloyds Bank, as a highly regulated organization, how have you found success using agentic AI? Where has it been a good fit for you folks?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Kevin. The first I'd like to say, I completely agree with everything that Marlena and Amy have said. I particularly like Amy sort of alluding to the fact that this is just a reinvention. It's just a rearticulation of the same old process automation stuff that we've gone through in the past. Her definition of an agentic or agents, I thought was really, really interesting. I quite like one that I found from the 1950s. Which says that an agent is something that is able to sense its environment and then have an effect on it. So it's stuff that's been talked about for ages. And I think like the picking up on what Marlena said here, really what we're talking about with AI agents and large language models is the ability to incorporate language and text into an automated process. And really it's as simple as that. So when it comes to like what are the applications for this, of course, document processing is going to be at the foundation of quite a lot of what we do. So at the bank, we've been looking very hard at how we interpret documentation and how we make that accessible to the workforce. If you look on Medium, we've just published one of our blogs recently where one of our insurance teams has published a document on From Documents to Decisions, how ontology-guided LLMs power a range of solutions at Lloyds Banking Group, which is really about how we structure data and make it accessible and summarize it in an accurate and precise way. There's loads of learning that we've gone through there. I do think that there's some business decisions to be made around what sort of model you use to do the work. The general models are great, but they tend to be expensive to run. And so there is a case to be made for smaller, more optimized models that look for very particular sorts of data so that you're getting like the most juice for the squeeze, as it were. So like when it comes to looking at so like broader use cases, I think the starting point that I take is like what would we ask a human telephony agent to do at the moment? We're not asking them to reinvent a process, we're asking them to apply a process based on a set of preconditions like that we have interpreted from the request of the customer. So what was the intent? And that sort of that approach opens up a notion of like, this is the entry point to a workflow based on language, interpreting that intent, taking it, then doing the work to fulfill it through an automated process is probably where we're focusing most at the start of our journey on introducing agentic workflows into the bank.
So you're using it in a couple of areas in documentation and then in customer service or tele agents, as you mentioned. Yeah, what have been some of the results? Can you share some of the results that you've been able to achieve as a result of employing agentic AI?
So I would say that with agents, we're probably just starting the journey with agents, but we've been using generative AI for a while now. And in 2025, at the beginning of the year, we set ourselves a target of generating £50 million worth of value or benefit across 50 different use cases across the bank. And we're like early on that target. We achieved that a month or so ago. I think probably one of the signature use cases there that really points to the power of documentation or using intelligent process documentation was in a piece of regulatory work where we had to review hundreds of thousands of customer credit agreements very quickly. And so we did that using an agentic workflow with generative AI. And we estimated that to employ the workforce to do that over the same period of time would have cost us £25 million.
Wow.
Nice results.
Yeah.
See, that's
I think we're
where
pleased with that.
that's where the rubber meets the road, as we would say here in the States, on process innovation.
Yeah.
All right, today we are here with Marlene Wolfgruber from Abbey, Hugh Jones from Lloyds Bank, and Amy Machado from IDC. We are here talking about agentic automation and the value to digital transformation and the adoption of AI and processes in ways that matter. Now, Amy, I'd like to move to you next. You are on the front line of current innovations and applications of AI. Where do you feel that agentic automation is or will be moving the needle in terms of innovation and process improvement over the next 24 months?
I think most folks are in kind of the stage of where Hugh and Lloyd's is, kind of that experimental phase, finding specific use cases and seeing it can work there, and then attributing it to, you know, a specific like value, money, cost savings, etc. I mean, right now, the biggest challenge for agentic automation is similar to like classic AI. I can't believe I'm saying classic AI, but it really is around security, privacy, compliance concerns. That comes from some recent IDC data where we asked folks specific to what they're doing with agentic automation. There's another concern about integrating within their legacy systems. It's not even so much a question as should this agent be able to access this system, but can it from a technology standpoint? So there's some things to figure out there. There's the question of like build versus buy. You can buy something. You just about every enterprise application that folks are working with is offering some off-the-shelf type of agent. There are the agentic frameworks for building things in-house. And then, you know, people are looking for like whatever, and this kind of gets back to what Hugh said, looking for things that they're doing already, but ways that an agent can optimize it. Agents for financial scenarios, agents for HR workflows, agents for customer support, agents for supply chain, agents for sales. So kind of these like out of the box solutions that people can use. Typically, people are really just kind of experimenting and testing. But then when we ask, you know, what are you tracking for success in terms of that investment? Number one is efficiency, faster time to resolution, better resource utilization. Number two is cost reduction, which I think Hugh showed that his company was able to do that very well. But then the third thing that people are looking at, I think is most fascinating, especially because for this conversation, is they're looking for the agents to help reduce errors and improve reasoning. And so it is kind of this iterative process that we are talking about. You know, the agents need very good data and language to do their work, but they also need to help improve the accuracy of actions. A lot of times within a business, a human will make decisions. That's really hard to audit what's going on in their brain. And so with agents, if you have that ability to kind of understand reasoning, it creates this whole new level of reasoning and error reduction that can kind of help support the business and improve those processes. It is kind of that iterative part of the content supply chain. It kind of comes back and continually improves and optimizes. But, you know, things are moving very quickly. We have agentic frameworks, we have agentic protocols, MCP or A2A, agent to agent, to make these agents interoperable, because not all of your enterprise data lives in one system. Some of it might not be internal, some of it might be external. So what will move the needle? You know, high quality data, robust data management, but people being able to show time to value and cost savings, I believe is really important. And then another thing I think is putting these capabilities into the hands of business users, people who understand their workflow. Like nobody understands the work that I do better than I do. And so if you give me quality data and then ensure security with the right access controls and monitoring, letting me kind of create pipelines that I could address current use cases or create new ones or evaluate what I'm doing, I think that will be kind of what will really move the needle forward.
All right, well, Amy and Hugh and Marlene, we have some questions and comments coming in from our audience. I'm hoping you can help me provide some perspective. We have one question here coming in from Esme. Esme, thank you for your question today. Esme is asking, what is the best way to identify which processes are ready for autonomous AI and which should remain human-led for now? I'll put it out to the group. Anyone have some feedback for Esme?
Well, we're talking to the business, like internally as part of the IT team, to encourage them to think about what processes might be open to being an agentic workflow. And so we start with the question, is language part of the process? So is there something that you have people doing at the moment where they're inherently they need to understand the written word or something that was said, or interpret some policy? And if the answer is yes to that, then it's something that an agent could do. The second question is, like, have you automated the things that sit around that language component of the process? And if the answer is no, then you should go ahead and do that. So you've got traditional mechanisms at your disposal, presumably. So APIs, RPA is a tool to connect to other business process automation tools, like Pega, for example, or something bespoke or something else that exists within your business. And then if you've got the language component and the tool there, then that's the start point for an agentic process flow. The next question we ask is, does it contain a reasoning component? So are you asking the human who does the process at the moment to engage their brain? It's not just about moving data from one place to another, but are they being asked to interpret something, summarize something up, and make a decision about where something should go? Well, if that's true as well, then that's also something that can be done by an agent. However, health warning on this. This is something that you should do at low scale first and then gradually scale up so you can understand where the edge cases fall out. And this is where you might need human in the loop or on the loop or some sort of chat interface so that you can engage with the agent so that you understand where the edge cases are on this and transfer that to a human to deal with, because there are circumstances that fall outside the normal parameters of the automation flow that you have established. Now, key to that will be sometimes, as we all know in the world, like, vendors will go ahead and update bits of software without necessarily telling everybody that that was going to happen. In our experience, when that happens with a model, that can have a profound effect on the outputs of the model for the given prompts that you've put in it. So we're very sensitive to those sorts of changes, and that's why you would need to have the right telemetry in place, the right alerting, and have a human in the loop in order to be able to adjust for that, and the correct failover processes to make sure that it's being done well. This all, of course, is around back office use cases. Times that by 10 with an extra layer of paranoia for everything that's happening in front of a customer.
We have another question coming in from David, and David, thank you for your question. Do you think that agentic will ultimately be the driver for manufacturing automation once historic data and standardization is in place? So does anyone have some feedback for David?
Manufacturing.
I'm getting a sense that maybe he's also asking a bit about historic data and standardization. I mean, how do those factor into not only manufacturing, but any automation process?
I guess the question around manufacturing would come back to my, like, where's the language involved? Where is the reasoning component?
David is saying custom manufacturing.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, if it's about interpreting the intent of what a customer wanted, like, normally that's a discussion that would take place with them. Like, I'm assuming like custom manufacturing, do we mean like a custom car or a bike or something like that? Then yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, then there's part of the process that could be open to an agent. But for me, it always comes back to where is the language involved in this, and where is the reasoning involved in this, and that's where an agent can be applied. So like any other tool, it needs to be the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
Now, Marlene, we are examining the value and promise of agentic automation. It can be difficult, if not impossible, to demonstrate the value of AI and automation if we don't have a clear idea of what the existing process is before we make improvements. Thankfully, there are new tools that can help with that. Can you describe the use of process AI to analyze the before and after process?
Sure. That's such an important point because, and I think we also touched upon this several times already, because no matter what kind of automation or technology you're investing in, you can't really start optimizing something, and Hugh was referring to this, I mean, they first ask questions, right? And analyze maybe how the process looks today or how it's done today before you can really optimize something. So you can't really optimize if you don't understand it. And before you roll out anything new, and you need really this clear picture of how the process actually looks and how it works today. And then you can think how they might work in the future, or how it should look in the future. And that's really a tough endeavor, I would say, because it's not really easy to map out processes. And this is really where process AI can make all the difference, because it gives you the visibility into how work really flows across systems, because Amy mentioned it as well. The data and the processes go across different systems, and it's definitely important to know how they flow across systems. And so that's really something that process AI makes visible. And you can spot the friction points and the exceptions and the steps that don't add value in order to then eliminate and eventually. And that really becomes your baseline for the improvement. So I'd say process AI isn't just, about the measurements, because, one thing maybe that's also important to add, because that's also, I mean, you also mentioned some numbers here. You also want to measure, right? Is the measurement or the improvement I'm doing also delivering, in terms of return on investment, and is actually, does it make sense? So proving ROI, is something that's also becoming important, especially with applying AI technologies. And process AI can also help with that, because if you can analyze the process beforehand, then maybe simulate how, certain changes to the process would affect the process and what the outcome is, you can measure before and then see the results afterward, and then continuously monitor how it's going, and then being able to, actually prove to the organization what impact it actually has. So I'd say process AI is really, it's not about just the measurement, but it's about creating understanding that makes every other transformation also more effective, and also prove on the other side, cost aspects of implementing any type of technology.
This is AI Talk. We are here today with Marlene Gruber, AI Document Strategy Lead at Abby. Also, Hugh Jones, Head of Product Intelligent Automation at Lloyd's Banking Group, and Amy Machado, Research Manager at IDC. We're here talking about agentic automation. If you have a question or a comment for our panel today, just pop it into the chat feature. We do have more comments coming in, folks, and I'd like to get to this one here from Mark. Mark is asking, how important do you see process orchestration being to the enablement of agentic AI? Agent automation, considering Gartner's view this as a core component of their boat magic quadrant. Anyone have a comment for Mark on this?
Yes, the orchestration is key. Absolutely. Because it's usually not just like one agent, kind of like a standalone agent. It's like an agentic framework. There's multiple agents. And there are, yes, different ways that you can orchestrate, the agents, but also like that to me is like once the orchestration part is absolutely key, but then thinking about kind of the overall, purpose of what it's doing, I think the orchestration layer, when I think about like the questions I mentioned a minute ago, the concerns and the challenges that people have now, like security, access control, who has access to what, but then legacy systems and being able to have API access, or be able to communicate with different systems. We hear things now about different enterprise applications kind of throttling access to certain agents, and it is the maneuverability of everything that is key. Will it remain kind of like an open? Do people have like the openness to achieve what they want to achieve? I think it's something that absolutely has to be considered, because if your agents don't really have that ability to kind of scale and access and get what they want, but then also making sure that everything that you're doing is secure in that flow. Yeah, it's very important.
Now, Marlene, you have a new study that can help us understand some of the conditions at play today. Can you briefly discuss that study, some of the findings, and what we might learn?
Yeah, it's super interesting, and I mean there were still lots of surprises, even though we already know a lot, and Gen AI is all over the place, let's basically. So we found that while almost every enterprise is experimenting with Gen AI, the biggest performance gains come from when they combine it with other intelligent technologies. So and actually we're able to improve results. So if they compare Gen AI with Document AI and Process AI, they saw up to 50% improvement in accuracy, speed, and overall business outcomes compared to using Gen AI alone, because these problems or challenges Amy mentioned earlier about hallucinations and stuff like that. And back to maybe the comment in the chat as well, it's more about the standardization of content and language, but I think this also is playing into that, because if you don't have a, like, let's say, trustworthy, reliable data source, you can't really achieve any good outcome with any technology applied, and especially not Gen AI. Yeah, but when you give it context from documents and structure from processes, it becomes really more reliable and more enterprise ready, and as Hugh said, also scalable. So yeah, the sweet spot, really, to summarize the outcomes from the survey, is the sweet spot isn't Gen AI everywhere. It's more Gen AI, used and integrated with real, governance and intelligence or business intelligence.
Hugh, how are you folks at Lloyd's using Gen AI today?
Yeah, guys, it's quite a broad question. Yeah, so we'll probably think about it in 3 domains. First off, we've got colleague productivity. We use the Microsoft suite of tools quite extensively. That's something which is sort of unfolding across the whole workforce at the moment. So using Copilot Studio to try and make sort of everyday sort of work process a bit more efficient. I think that's going quite well. On the sort of the customer facing front, we're just starting the journey at the moment. We've been using generative AI in the background for our chatbot for a while, but we do want to make that much more of a truly agentic process. Like, we feel that we can do like much more personalization for the customer, make sure we remember what they've said. There's opportunities for us to make it more secure using generative AI that we want to explore. There's definitely the opportunity to make banking services far more accessible on an everyday basis, an ability to be able for us to be able to serve the customer much more quickly than we otherwise would have done by taking a lot of friction out of processes. So that's a key game changer for us. We also see those agents having a role in the contact center. When you ring, you should be able to speak to the same AI agent that you would chat to if you were using it through the app. That agent should remember the last point of contact it had with you, or indeed the last point of contact you had with any other human in the bank. So that data component and making that data accessible to the agents becomes absolutely critical there. Yeah, but on the back office processing bit, I think we'll probably end up using a mix of both sets of tools to help support the various use cases that we'd have. But like, answering directly the question about orchestration, like Kevin, you mentioned acronyms. Well, BOAT is another one. I think it's a business orchestration and automation technology from memory. Well, look, so I think orchestration is going to be key. Where agents are going to differ significantly from RPA is if you think of RPA as a series of parallel automation flows, agents are going to be more like a mesh, I think. So yes, that will create nodal points where agents are being reused. And so we have to think carefully about how they scale. Is that horizontal or vertical scaling? What traffic passes through it? And I think Amy mentioned about permissions and authorization. And so, like, how does that work in a highly integrated, orchestrated agentic system? And how do you run that at scale? You have the right failover, the right networking, and so on and so forth. So those are all key questions for us to start. Well, we are starting to explore those now, and how we integrate that into our processes. It also creates another interesting opportunity because within orchestration, you can also orchestrate your agents into teams with a hierarchy, and those teams themselves can be organized into teams of teams with a hierarchy. So all of a sudden you can have agents looking after teams that interpret policy, interpret the telemetry and the logging and reporting that comes from those processes. And all of a sudden you've got a business expert who's a colleague within your organization. So those are the things that we're starting to think about. Responsible AI has to be laid into all of that. So again, it comes back to security permissions and authorizations of what data agents can see and can use, which brings us back to the importance of data and access to data. And finally, another impenetrable word that all of the data scientists love to use is the ontology that the agents will use. For simple folk like me, that's just the dictionary of terms that we all agree on that mean the same things. I don't know about you, Kevin, but if you've tried to have a conversation with a teenager recently, then sometimes the things that are said and the things that are heard can be very different, with outcomes that disappoint everybody. So what we're trying to do is get the business to write down the things that it means when it says verb this or noun that, and compare where there are sort of the same word being used in different contexts, and make sure that our agents understand that when it comes to interpreting policy, and like how that interacts with the rest of the workflow. So data, meaning, words, language, it all boils back down to the same thing, right? And it's all contained mostly in our documentation.
Well, Hugh, Amy, Marlene, it's been great speaking with you today. We're almost out of time, but I want to take this opportunity in just the few minutes that we have left to get to this one last question from James on LinkedIn. James, I know you've been waiting, and thank you so much for your contribution today. James is asking, how might agentic AI reshuffle traditional roles in workflows? This shift in our perception of automation into a new realm. With empowering agents, specialized tasks could evolve. Curious what interaction challenges may arise once autonomy is embraced. Marlene and everyone, do you have any feedback for James?
Yeah, super interesting question. When the work's being done by agents, who trains the human workforce to be the bankers, doctors, and so forth of the future? So that's something we need to think about.
Who writes the standard operating procedures? Who does the documentation? It was like I was saying earlier, a lot of decisions are made in a knowledge worker's head because they know from history, experience. Yeah.
Correct. So it's about empowering the knowledge worker, I think, and removing. And automation does what it always does. It's like moves us up a level in the thinking process and adding value across a broader range of topics. So I think there'll be a collapsing of roles that ends up in us defining new jobs for people that encompasses a wider range of tasks, where we become a bit more dependent on the automated processes that sit beneath us.
I saw someone mention someone recently said, well, yeah, sure, okay, like it'll take away like 2 hours of your work week. And I was like, great, so I'll work 58 hours a week instead of 60. You know, it's not like, I'm not really concerned yet about this great replacement that a lot of people doomsday about. I was promised flying cars and I still don't have that, so.
All right, this is AI Talk. We are here with Marlene Wolfgruber, Hugh Jones, and Amy Machado. Folks, it has been great speaking with you today. We are just about out of time, but before I let you go, I'm wondering if each of you could please provide us with one quick action item that our viewers can use to take advantage of your ideas and advice. Marlene, do you have an action item for us today?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'd say, and I already said that, I think, start by understanding the process and the work you're doing before picking the technology, because I think that's crucial. And then pinpoint where automation can make the biggest impact. Use Document AI to give your teams real insights, and then layer Gen AI on top if necessary. Yeah, so it can learn, reason, and grow more reliable over time.
That is Marlene Wolfgruber, AI Document Strategy Lead at Abby. Marlene, thank you so much for being with us today. Hugh, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, sure. Stop doing proofs of concept and get on and tackle the really big thing. The best way to learn is by doing.
Wonderful. Hugh Jones, Head of Product Intelligent Automation at Lloyd's Banking Group. Hugh, thank you so much for being with us today. And Amy, do you have an action item for us today?
Mine, I'm going to steal a little bit from what Hugh said earlier. I've always tried to kind of like put agentic into like a specific bucket. It felt very like I'm always like prescriptive, if then that, like that's kind of what RPA was. But when you kind of put it in that framework of just natural human language, kind of having a conversation of how you want to set up what you're trying to do, is that the best way to do it? I think that's a really interesting way to think about agentic automation. It kind of does put it back into that like human language element that is necessary.
That is Amy Machado, Research Manager at IDC. Amy, Hugh, and Marlene, thank you so much for joining us today. What a great panel. Your perspectives and advice are spot on, so thank you so much. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today on LinkedIn and Zoom, everywhere, thank you so much for joining us. Join us again next time on November 6th. We'll have another great panel of guests discussing the topic of AI in the pharmaceutical industry. It should be another great discussion. And if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. Check me out. I'm Kevin Crane. And you can check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of AI Talk. And until next time, I am Kevin Crane saying thanks for watching.